Tonight, another day.
Another mass shooting.
This time a massacre in Northern California, even as the death toll rises in the wake of this weekend's Southern California rampage.
Plus, a bombshell tax bill.
What this bill would do is essentially eliminate those 5 taxes in favor of a national retail sales tax.
The legislation stirring bipartisan backlash.
And
this is the biggest criminal case in the pro-life movement in my memory.
After an early morning raid, a major trial over a pro-life activist begins.
All this and more
Tonight on Faith Nation.
Newly discovered classified documents, this time at former Vice President Mike Pence's home. Good evening and welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And in our Washington studio, I'm Jenna Browder. A new wrinkle in the ongoing controversy over classified documents. Former Vice President Pence now entering the fray.
The Justice Department taking possession of a, quote, small number of classified documents that Mr. Pence found at his Indiana home. The former VP notified the National Archives about the classified materials days before handing them over to FBI agents. Those agents coming to the Pence home in Carmel, Indiana, the night of January 19th. Pence's lawyers say he wasn't aware of the existence of the documents previously. Upon hearing the news, rushing to his defense, his former boss. In a post on his social media platform, former President Trump called Mike Pence a, quote, innocent man who never did anything knowingly dishonest in his life, Trump adding emphatically to his critics, leave him alone.
Well, on Capitol Hill, a new rallying cry for some Republicans, abolish the IRS.
That's right. During his bid to secure the Speaker's gavel, Mr. Kevin McCarthy reportedly promised members of the conservative House Freedom Caucus a vote on a bill to replace the current federal tax system. The plan includes nixing personal income taxes in favor of a national sales tax.
Yeah, a move that could lead to the end of the IRS. CBN White House correspondent Abigail Robertson is at the White House and joins us with more. Abigail?
Well, Jenna, while Democrats and President Biden are working to boost the IRS by hiring 87,000 employees over the next 10 years, Republicans have introduced a bill that could lead to the end of the IRS, called the Fair Tax Act.
Very few people like paying taxes, but if they're going to pay taxes, they would much rather pay a consumption tax as opposed to a property tax.
Congressman Buddy Carter tells CBN News this bill gives people more control over their taxes.
In a consumption tax, you have control over how much tax you want to pay. You can decide if you want to buy a boat, you're going to pay taxes. If you don't want to pay taxes, don't buy the boat. Essentially, right now, Americans are paying 33 cents. In taxes. This will bring it down to 23 cents. It's actually a 23% tax.
Critics say the bill would hurt Americans who make less money because as prices go up for basic necessities, they'll have to spend a higher share of their income on daily expenses. Carter claims the bill addresses that problem.
There is a prebate, and what happens is that at the first of the month, everyone will get a check so that you will be able to cover the bare necessities. That is food, shelter, clothing, the things that everybody has got to have. So you get that prebate to cover that, get you above the poverty line. Anything above that, that's your responsibility.
Even with Republicans in the majority in the House, it's not guaranteed the bill will pass.
It's seen as a political loser. Democrats are already kind of salivating at the chance to attack Republicans on this because it's widely seen, probably correctly, as shifting the tax burden to the middle class. That in order to bring in the same amount of money that the current tax system does.
Congressional Democrats have already attacked the plan, and President Biden is also criticizing it.
House Republicans are preparing to vote on a national sales tax bill. National sales tax, that's a great idea. It would raise taxes on the middle class by taxing thousands of everyday items from groceries to gas, while cutting taxes for the wealthiest Americans.
Biden plans to blast GOP economic proposals like the Fair Tax Act in a speech on Thursday. But he claims that he stands ready to work with Republicans, but not on stuff like this. John, Jenna?
All right, thank you, Abigail. Well, here now, Nathan Gonzalez, editor and publisher of Inside Elections. Nathan, back to our top story. Classified documents now found at the home of former Vice President Mike Pence. Firstly, Nathan, how significant is this? And on a broader level, do you think this represents a systemic problem when it comes to classified materials?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure if I have classified documents. I got a lot of boxes with papers in them, and so I think if the FBI wanted to come get them, my wife would let them. But more seriously, I think Republicans have to figure something out. They have to figure out whether having and holding and mishandling classified documents is right or wrong. Because if it's wrong, then Vice President Pence is wrong, is in the wrong, and former President Trump is in the wrong by multitudes over what Biden did. The other thing that comes to mind is that now with this Pence situation, there's still a clear difference with how Pence and Biden have handled this compared to former President Trump. In the case of Pence, the documents are found. Pence said, take them. And with Biden, his lawyers found them. They said, here, we're going to give these back. When they were found or thought to be, when Trump had them, the FBI had to come get them because he didn't hand them over. So there's still a lot of things that Republicans have to figure out when they're trying to win the political war over these documents.
Nathan, speaking of former President Trump, he rushed to Pence's defense. Do you think this is him making amends, or maybe Trump thinks it's good for him politically going into 2024?
Well, Jenna, maybe I'm jaded. I don't think Trump does many things that he doesn't think are in his best interest. I think Trump believes there's something to gain by defending Pence, because obviously Trump has been a critic of Pence in other situations. I'm not exactly sure what's going on in the former president's mind, but he believes I believe he thinks it's in his best interest to come out and defend him.
Nathan, we just heard Abigail's report. The sales tax bill appears doomed to fail ultimately, but bringing the bill to the House floor is a concession that Mr. McCarthy had to make in order to become House Speaker. To you, what does this suggest of his control over rank-and-file GOP?
Well, I think this is, we just got done with Christmas, but this is a political gift from Republicans to Democrats. I realize that McCarthy, it sounds like he had to do this as a way to get to become Speaker, but Democrats are just going to say now it's going to be in every campaign ad. Republicans want a national sales tax, 30% on everything you buy. And Republicans are going to have to say, oh, well, no, actually, that's not what we mean. It's abolishing the IRS. And they're going to have to spend all this time explaining it. And that will take time away from them trying to make the case about why Democrats shouldn't be elected. So I don't think this is going to go away, because Democrats are going to make sure people know about this proposal, even if it doesn't pass.
Including President Biden. He's set to give a major economic speech, Nathan, this week, tying this national sales tax bill to Republican Party as a whole, painting Republicans as extreme. What do you make of that strategy?
Well, it's the right strategy. We'll see how it resonates with real people and real voters. What's interesting to watch is Biden's job approval rating. It has started to get a little bit better over the last few weeks and couple months. And this is in light of the document situation, and now it'll be in light of President Biden trying to talk about Republicans' tax plan. The State of the Union is coming up, so keep an eye on Biden's job approval rating, because I think that will affect both whether he runs for re-election or not, and how successful Democrats are going to be moving forward.
Nathan, I wanted to circle back to something you said earlier. I wasn't sure if we'd have time, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but thank you for clarifying that you do not have classified documents at your home. Nathan Gonzalez of Inside Elections, we always appreciate your time.
No problem. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Nathan. And still to come, a major trial in the pro-life movement, how it could change the future of activism against abortion. Welcome back. Well, last September, federal agents came with guns drawn to Mark Houck's home and took him away in front of his wife and his children. Today, he stands trial in what's being called the biggest criminal case in the pro-life movement.
His crime? Prosecutors say he interfered with a clinic volunteer after a physical altercation at a Planned Parenthood facility. CBN's Matt Galka reports from Philadelphia with more on the case.
Jury selection is set to begin today here in Philadelphia in a trial that Mark Houck's attorneys say could have major implications for pro-life supporters and for how they're allowed to try and keep advancing their message. Houck's case has drawn national attention given the circumstances of his arrest last September. In an early morning raid at his home, federal agents took Houck into custody nearly a year after he and Planned Parenthood volunteer Bruce Love got into a physical altercation outside of a Philadelphia abortion clinic. Houck's attorney, Peter Breen, says his client was targeted for his pro-life advocacy.
Mr. Love had brought a private criminal complaint in the Philadelphia, the municipal courts. That case was thrown out because Mr. Love didn't show up for court twice. And so that is where the matter should have ended. But instead, the Biden administration wanted to make an example out of Mark Houck.
Part of the Justice Department's indictment alleges Houck attempted to, quote, injure, intimidate, and interfere with the Planned Parenthood volunteer because they were providing reproductive services. The DOJ calls it a violation of the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, or FACE Act. If convicted, Houck could receive a maximum 11 years in prison and a $350,000 fine. Houck, a Catholic sidewalk counselor, maintains he was protecting his son from a verbal assault from the volunteer.
Look, if this is allowed to stand, it's an invitation to abortion escorts to be very aggressive, because who's the Biden DOJ going to believe? The abortion escort or the sidewalk counselor? And the federal government can take any case it wants. They can indict anybody they want. They can take any case they want to trial. And so if this is allowed to stand, it would create a horrible and dangerous precedent for sidewalk counseling across the country.
Houck's defense argues the FACE Act was never meant to cover volunteer abortion escorts, only clinic patients and personnel.
We've told the court that Mark is going to testify. So the defendant, he is going to take the stand. We intend to put him on the stand. And his son is intending to testify to talk about what he saw that day. And so this is really going to be, it's a big case. It's what I say. This is the biggest criminal case in the pro-life movement in my memory.
Houck's attorneys hope to have a pretty quick resolution, and there could be a decision by the end of the week. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Matt Gelka, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Matt. And here with us now is Cully Stimson with the Heritage Foundation. Cully, thanks for joining us tonight. Great to have you. So does this have the potential to become a long, drawn-out case, or is it pretty cut and dry?
This is a misdemeanor push, at most an assault. And frankly, no prosecutor, including Larry Krasner, the Soros bought and paid for rogue prosecutor in Philadelphia, even charged this as a misdemeanor. No prosecutor, and I was a prosecutor at the federal and state level, would give this case any weight whatsoever. At most, it was a situation of mutual combat. Mr. Love, what an ironic name, against Mr. Houck, and Mr. Houck was defending his son. This is not a case that you would bring even in a misdemeanor court.
Cully, the Justice Department accuses Houck of violating what we just talked about, the FACE Act, attempting to injure, intimidate, and interfere with a Planned Parenthood volunteer. Do his actions constitute a violation of that law?
I don't think so from the evidence we've seen. And in fact, if you go back to the origination of the statute, it was none other than Senator Ted Kennedy who made it clear on the floor of the Senate that this act was not meant to cover people who were escorting people to the facility. It was only meant to cover people providing the actual abortion or people inside the facility. So I think that this defense attorney has a very good argument. I'm sure he'll make a motion to the judge to dismiss the case. And even after the government puts on their evidence at the halfway point of the trial, he'll make a motion for a finding of not guilty, in other words, a directed verdict. So I think I would rather be the defense in this case because I like winning, and I think the defense has the winning hand here.
Whether or not Mr. Houck is guilty, do you think the DOJ's response was proportional to the alleged crime, or was it heavy-handed, as you're suggesting?
That's outrageous. I mean, not only is it outrageous that they're sending essentially a SWAT team in to a religious man's house for a push, at most, if you believe the government's case, but his lawyers were already talking to DOJ, and he offered to turn himself in. And so, I mean, think about it a different way. If this was a situation where you had an abortion counseling office and pro-abortion people were out yelling and screaming and they pushed one of the people at the counseling, do you think the DOJ would bring a case against that? Of course not. This is a one-way ratchet, and this DOJ has way overplayed their hand for a push at most.
Cully, in Matt's report, we just heard the attorney for Mr. Houck say that Mark will testify and take the stand, as will his son. What does that suggest to you of the defense's case?
Well, first off, most defense attorneys, and I was one of those too, don't promise that your client's going to testify because, of course, it's the client's right to make a decision at the point in trial. We may not even get to that point. The government's case may fail at the midpoint if the judge takes the case away. But if it gets to that point, and if Mr. Houck exercises his right to testify in his own defense, then he's pretty darn sure that he was on the right and he was protecting his son. And if this young man has to take the stand, I'm sure the jury will lean in and listen to the young fella. Now, there may be video evidence, and I've read in some instances that there's video of this whole incident, and that would provide an objective view of what happened, and then the jury is going to have to make up their mind. But if he's convicted, you can be darn sure he's going to appeal.
Yeah. Mr. Houck's attorney says he was unfairly targeted by the Justice Department to make an example out of him. What do you make of that claim?
Well, look, I mean, you see DAs across the country refusing to prosecute misdemeanors, including assaults. Why is this Justice Department targeting a person for a push at most, which is probably mutual combat, because you have Mr. Love, who was being a vulgarian and getting in the face of this young man's son, and then you have this sort of mutual combat situation. So I'm not going to ascribe a motive. I just think it's a total waste of federal government resources when they could be going after career armed felons in cities who have guns, who are ex-felons, and charging them in federal court for ex-felon in possession. So this is an abuse of resources, I think, an abuse of process.
All right, Cully Stimson with the Heritage Foundation. We are out of time. Thank you so much for your insights on this case.
Thanks for having me.
3 mass shootings in 3 days. When we come back, how one Christian ministry is responding to reeling communities in California. Well, welcome back. Federal flags fly at Half-Staff for another night to honor the growing list of lives lost to gun violence in America. Nearly 20 people dead after several mass shootings in California this week alone.
The most recent, 2 separate shootings, killing at least 7. Police have a suspect in custody. And while investigators search for a motive, pastors are on the ground grieving with families. CBN's Brody Carter has that part of the story. Brody, what's the mission for these chaplains?
Well, John, Jenna, it's a mission of presence. This is the Rapid Response Team's first deployment for a mass shooting this year. 8 chaplains are on the ground providing emotional support in communities reeling from gun violence.
It doesn't matter the demographics, the background. When people are grieving, the chaplains are there to provide emotional, spiritual support and just to listen. And to pray with those who want prayer.
Jason Scalzi and the Billy Graham Rapid Response Team confront one of the more difficult forms of grief, loss of life from gun violence. The organization headed to California after Saturday's shooting in Monterey Park that killed 11. The city is known as the country's first suburban Chinatown, with more than 60% Asian American.
It's first generation Chinese immigrants. They're very private. The language barrier is an issue, but BGA, Rapid Response Team, have deployed chaplains who speak Mandarin and Cantonese. So I'm asking that you would join us in prayer that they will arrive here soon. They're supposed to be here this morning.
The suspect in this weekend shooting, 72-year-old Houck killed himself as police closed in, leaving unanswered questions and a city in mourning.
Many of us are just asking ourselves, what was the motive? How does this person get an illegal firearm?
Scalzi's mission expanded Monday following 2 shootings in Half Moon Bay, just south of San Francisco, home to Venice Beach. First at a mushroom farm, then a trucking facility 2 miles away, resulting in multiple deaths. Police arrested 66-year-old Chun-Li Zhao in that shooting.
Zhao is believed to have acted alone, and there is no further threat to this community.
The Billy Graham Rapid Response Team is now on standby to continue helping those in need.
If it wasn't for the presence and the power of the Holy Spirit in the lives working in and through our chaplains, we would not be able to do what we do. That's it. It's only by God that we're able to do this.
Well, just hours after the mass shooting in Half Moon Bay, 8 people were shot at a gas station in Oakland. 1 died. Police do expect the other 7 to survive, and that makes 39 mass shootings this month alone. Per the Gun Violence Archive. As for Billy Graham's chaplain teams, they have over 2,000 chaplains in the U.S., helping disaster areas nationwide and also with the war in Ukraine. Brody Carter, CBN News.
All right, Brody, thank you very much. Well, turning overseas, the success of the historic Abraham Accords is a bright spot in promoting peace between Israel and its neighbors. Highlighting their congressional trip to the Middle East last week, the bipartisan group of senators who put the agreement together said the accords are helping to transform the region in ways that were once unimaginable.
It's no great secret that the 7 of us don't all agree on every issue. But we're all very passionate about what's happening in the Abraham Accords. And we find a common ground there to be able to work on and see what we can do to be able to help encourage every way that we can to advance this agreement.
Partisan Senate Abraham Accords caucus wants to strengthen the agreement by expanding to include more countries. And still ahead, a powerful reminder that Jesus always wins. Finally tonight, Born Again, a special baptism, a lifetime in the making.
This past Sunday, a 77-year-old woman named Susan decided to get baptized. Pastor Ryan Burton King of Grace Baptist Church in London shared video of his brother, Reagan Blanton King, baptizing the former agnostic, then carrying her out of the pool.
Pray with Christ in baptism. Raised to walking in this body.
Reagan tweeted that Susan was agnostic for years and struggled with Parkinson's and other issues over the last year, but now she trusts Jesus as Lord of her life. And at 77, she proves that it's really never too late to make that decision.
Yeah, I love that, and welcome to new life. Beautiful.
That's right, and just also the care and compassion he had to carry and lift her out of the pool. Just wonderful to see.
Beautiful. All right, that's going to do it for Faith Nation.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.